All right, so this is going to be a follow-up video for the PicoNav deep dive. I've got a lot of really interesting feedback, comments, and questions that I wanted to go over today. So this is going to be a little more of a conversational video. It's going to be an update video as well. People have been asking, kind of what happens from here, what's going to happen during the beta test, what's the time frames, and a couple of other things as well. So I wanted to take the time to go ahead and address some of these things. So, first and foremost, let's get the big question out of the way is what happens next? So, from here, I'm actually selecting 50 beta testers. I actually have most of them selected now, so shortly after this video comes out, those 50 testers will receive an email talking about what happens next. As far as time frame goes, I wanted to begin the actual testing and placing the orders in January. I didn't really want to get in the way of doing anything during the holidays. Myself personally, I've been kind of running around doing a bunch of other things with family and friends and gifts and side projects, and it's just if I'm experiencing these kind of things, I didn't really want other people to have the and life get in the way and mixed up between everything. So I would rather we wait until January to begin the whole process and getting everything started. So what that means is for the beta testers who do get selected, and this will be included in your email that you get, you will have until the end of the month to confirm that you do want to be a beta tester to place your order. And then once the orders are placed, we will get all of the parts and everything ordered. So realistically, even though the ordering process itself won't actually close until the beginning of January. It could be anywhere from 2 weeks to another month until testing actually begins, because again, we're waiting for a bulk shipment of parts from China. So realistically, the testing may not even begin until like mid-January or early February, to which point I do want to have another month for people to really use this thing day to day, give me their feedback, and kind of tell me what they like and what could use improvements and that type of stuff. So after that, we'll look into the full launch shortly after, and that gives me time to clean up some of the things that we've noticed during the testing and then make some changes. So that's the big part. A lot of people have been asking about that and kind of what happens next. Again, there will be more information on the Discord. If you don't get chosen, please do not feel bad or anything like that. I just need to keep the sample size to a manageable party so I understand and I can take very controlled pieces of data to utilize moving forward to make a better product. Also, with that, if you're curious on updates as things move on, there will be a dedicated channel in the Discord for testers only that'll eventually open up to the broader public, but this will allow people to see what testers are going through, some of the posts that they make, some of their opinions, and to give you guys a better idea of how the development of the product is going. All right. So, with that being said, this is not a fully scripted video like the last one was, so I'm kind of just talking on a couple of bullet points. I wanted to talk about some of the common questions and feedback that I've gotten from the survey and from the beta application to hopefully give you guys a better picture of what my insights are. And then, again, of course, if you guys have questions or comments along the way, please let me know. I have to be completely honest, the feedback and the ideas and the comments that I got from the beta test application was quite frankly amazing. Some of the things that you guys have said were very, honestly, very sweet and kind and reassuring, but also there were some phenomenal ideas that I instantly want to add to the PicoNav, and then a couple of other pieces that I've noticed are kind of reoccurring that perhaps I didn't explain very well, or that haven't really been broadcasted just quite yet, unless you've been actively following me on Twitch or something like that. And I don't expect anyone to do that. So I think the first thing that I hear the most about the PicoNav thus far, from everything that I've seen, is the lack of sound and evolution. Those two pieces have been very back and forth, and I think I've gotten a mix of comments from both sides. And quite frankly, I expected this. Um, there are some pieces of this that I'm going to tell you right now I'm going to be pretty firm on, and that may ruffle a couple of feathers, and I apologize. But when it comes to sound, I did actually experiment with sound. I got a brand new soldering iron and a soldering station. I got the Pine Sol with the trademark, Veek half black, half translucent thing going on over here. And I did test this actually, and this when I used the speakers, they were admittedly not that great. The sound was maybe half as loud as like a vital bracelet was, and it was very finicky. I also had to program a couple of like custom notes and frequencies. The actual build process was not quick, and that's actually a consideration that we have to make when designing these. Is that manufacturing these at scale, as I mentioned in my deep dive video, is one of the most important aspects of the PicoNav. I didn't really want to spend too much time building a product that would take too long because if any complications arise, we end up with another Vital Pet scenario. In fact, if you guys have followed me recently on Twitch, you know about my scenario with this stupid thing in my stupid broken screen and such. And this is actually a prime example of why mass producing items can be difficult. So, in regards to sound, I'm sorry, but it's not happening. I've considered in the future doing something like adding speakers onto the website and having preliminary code inside of the PicoNav. So if any brave modders want to try it themselves, both on a hardware and a software level, the tools will be present. But at base, the PicoNav will not have sound. After testing it, it's just not worth my time and research and development and energy. There's too many things that can go wrong when manufacturing these. So what I'll most likely do is pre-wire a couple of speakers, and if people want to buy them, you can buy them for $5. And if you've got some soldering skills, go for it. If somebody decides to take the code and then add sound, a lot of the base code is actually in there already, so the foundation's there. And we'll talk about that in one of the other points as well when it comes to the code. So we're gonna leave a little pin on that. As far as evolution, to make it very, very clear, there is no evolution. Dave does not evolve. What you guys do in the PicoNav is with your own guy. There is no evolution mechanic whatsoever. I don't want to do evolution. I'm not going to do evolution. If somebody wants to put it in there in the future on their own, go for it. The base game will not have evolution, period. And the reason for that is while this is a pocket RPG and a virtual pet, I had to make the very tough decision. Well, I had to make two decisions. The first is going to be around customization, and I didn't want to have to deal with things like form changes while also having to have several hundred customizable items that also happen to fit on Dave or on your Pico or whatever. Because if you think about this from like a Pokemon or a Digimon perspective, if you're making a hat for Pikachu or something like that, and then suddenly it evolves to Raichu, well, the geometry changes. And then if you multiply that by 250 something, you run into the Game Freak problem. I'm one solo developer with a day job and other projects going on, and realistically, it's not feasible for me to add something like that. I understand that from a virtual pet perspective, evolution is a core aspect, and I chose to not go that route, and I wanted to focus on battle mechanics. I understand that there can also be implications to battle mechanics for doing something like this, but I didn't see a good way to do that while still retaining the same level of wardrobe customization. I know people have talked about adding custom gear onto the PicoNav to give you guys different stat attributes and to give different buffs and changes and something to kind of keep things fresh. And that's something that I want to consider, but as of now, it's not happening. I do want to talk about difficulty curve and customization in a moment. That's also kind of pinned with the software piece. So I do want to brush up on that next. Maybe not next, but shortly. So we'll put another pin on that. We'll get to it in a bit with the conversation. But for now, no sound, no evolution. Pretty firm on those. The sound I would have loved to have, but it's just not feasible. The evolution doesn't really fit with the design philosophy that I'm looking for. People have also asked for other customizations, things like a vibration motor, which kind of falls in line with sound of like, I don't have the space or the capacity to add a vibration motor. I mean, like maybe here, maybe, but then there's the whole wiring piece again that gets a little difficult. Um, Most likely what I'm going to end up doing is for people who have soldering skills, I will probably add an option to have the PicoNav come pre-assembled or partially assembled, and then if people want to add their own stuff, they can. I love the idea of a vibration motor. I don't know if one is going to fit in here realistically. I think it'd be really sweet though. So something I can play with in the future, but not really happening right this second. On the note of the future, I want to talk about the software for a minute. I think one misconception that a lot of people have, which I saw a lot, is people were talking about community support and whether or not there will be community adoption. And I want to go up and say that I have many, many, many plans to keep this thing running. And I actually wanted to get a roadmap posted, and I never really got around to it, so I should probably do that soon. But I have a swath of features that I want to add in here. And regardless of whether or not third party support comes out for the PicoNav, I plan on adding my own additions that I've wanted to see for a long time on here anyway. I mentioned in my initial video that scope was a very big deal for me because I, as a solo developer, need to find the most amount of value in the least amount of time or effort. So over time, as things kind of, smooth out and production gets a little smoother, I wanted to add things in here such as random encounters, different expansions, new modes, new mini games, new items. Achievements is another big thing that I wanted to add. Backgrounds is another thing that I wanted to try to add as well in the future. There are extra things on here that, regardless of whatever happens with the community or how well it gets adopted or what kind of support it picks up, I plan on supporting this thing for a while, is what I want to get to. I don't want people to get the wrong idea that I am going to put out this product and then just suddenly drop software support after launch. That was never the intention, and launch to me is only the beginning. I have seen so many different good ideas. In fact, one person had the idea, instead of doing a food dungeon, to have a separate thing like a garden where you can go and grow some of food for like the basic items. You can grow plants to basically transform those plants into, well, regular food to feed your pico, but also like health potions, and like beans or something to make into energy drinks to increase your stats. That way, there's something passive still going on even outside of battles. And again, there are mini games planned. There are going to be random encounters to kind of break the monotony of just going through a battle all the time. There's going to be different encounters, both good and bad. Some of them are going to be more interactive. Some of them are just going to be like chance things. The intention is to have other stuff slowly be added in over time. That way, I can keep things fresh, I can keep things going, I can listen to feedback, but also, I'm not killing myself and promising the world to everybody because I am still a solo developer. I hate saying that so many times. I'm sure you guys get the point by now, but scope is a really big thing. I think one of the pitfalls that a lot of indie developers fall into is, we could do this and we can do that, and they start promising the world, and none of these things really come into fruition. And actually, the other big software thing that everybody has that came up a million times that I personally want more than any other feature in the PicoNav is multiplayer. And I'm gonna start off by saying that don't expect multiplayer. I want multiplayer more than anything, but if if you guys didn't know, I actually made a multiplayer game about 5 or 6 years ago. I made an online card action battler thing. It was basically Mega Man Battle Network, but like online with unique characters and cards and sprite work and all that. And I know that making a game is hard, and making a multiplayer game is even harder. When we talk about scope and effort to value and time spent, multiplayer adds so much extra time where I could easily double or even triple the amount of work that has to go in here for not that same level of return. So what that means is, can this thing have multiplayer? Do I want multiplayer battles, and do I want the ability to, send player cards and look at people's stats and stuff? Yes, absolutely I do. Am I looking into it? Absolutely, I am. Am I promising it to you? Absolutely not. It's something that down the road, when the base game is stable, when we've added the core features and the single player experience is genuinely fleshed out, we can look into multiplayer battles. There are also some questions and concerns that I have about battling with incompatible versions if people don't update it, or somebody's maybe running like a custom ROM or a mod of a specific version, how those line up. So there's a larger conversation to be had. There's also conversations about infrastructure and how that's going to work. This thing does have the ability to have a built-in Wi-Fi connection, which means that you could probably do local multiplayer relatively easily. But then when it comes down to things like online multiplayer, how does that work? There are a lot of questions that need to be asked and answered that, quite frankly, will take up too much time. So I'm not promising it, but just know I want multiplayer more than any of you. For the people who don't know, I play games to be competitive. I was a competitive Pokemon player for several years. I hit like the top 100 in the world for Pokemon X and Y, and I traveled around the world, not the world, the US playing in tournaments. I'm a competitive Magic player. I play like the games I play are only competitive multiplayer, so Valorant, Duelist. I don't even know what I'm playing right now. Outside of that, because I don't really play that many games anymore. But I absolutely love multiplayer. I think it's like one of it, to me it is the reason to play games is to have experiences not just alone but with others as well. So, I could talk about this forever. The point is, do not expect multiplayer. It's not happening until it magically does one day if I ever get time. Or if somebody else decides to, pick up that mantle and we can push it to the main branch or something. But for now, it's not happening. I'm sorry. Some other questions that people have had in regards to mod support and third party support while we're talking about this as well. I, as I stated before, I do want to support other people making their own custom, we'll call them ROMs for lack of a better term, but I want them to have their own custom projects and custom ROMs. I want to be able to showcase them. If people have ideas that they want to add to the main branch that could benefit the community as a whole, I will more than happily review them and then even accept them. I've left some base code in the PicoNav as well for people who want to do things like earlier I mentioned sound is a big one. Battery optimizations and getting the battery percentage is another thing I left on here for the nerds who are in the know. This board does not have any kind of like dedicated power management chip, so all of the battery voltage calculations or voltage, all the battery percentage calculations are done with voltage, which means that it's very inaccurate and kind of jittery. So I elected to just take it out to not confuse people. But that code I've been working on and off for months is also still in there. There is code for an internal clock. There is no built-in RTC, but you can set the time just like you do for, traditional Digimon or Tamagotchi V-Pets, that type of stuff. So that's in here as well. There was no functional use for it though. People have also asked about, adding things like an accelerometer. It's not built into the PicoNav, or it's not built into the ESP32, so I can't really do that. But just know I have the support in there. If anybody else wants to take the mantle, they can. I don't have the technical capability to make my own custom board, and even if I did make a custom board, it may not be economical, so that's just not something that we're really looking into quite this moment. Maybe if there's in the future a revision, X or something that we can look at it, but for the time being, this device isn't even out yet, and I want to try to keep things realistic. So that was one thing that I heard a lot. Um, Couple of other things people have talked about, like the screen and the durability of the screen. Obviously, being acrylic, and you can see the scratches that I have on here from kind of just using it and keeping it in my pocket with my keys day to day. I have had requests for screen protectors and I've had requests for cases. Specifically, like, because it would be official essentially. I am talking to my uh, acrylic cutting manufacturer, my contact, to see if they can make little like PET screen protectors, little film ones that you apply. So those may be able to be purchasable at launch in the future. I do plan on having all of the parts be available as replacements, so you'll be able to buy replacement acrylic screens. You'll be able to buy replacement like, full body kits and stuff like that too, if anything ever breaks in the future. So if your board is still working and you want to get the other parts, you can. If for some reason you want to build your own, honestly, I think at that point you're probably paying more than just buying it from me, but you do you. Um, that's going to be available as well. So I'll make sure that the parts are sourceable still. But if you want to buy a screen protector, I'm testing those right now. I should be able to do them. I'm not promising it, but there's like a 95% chance it's happening unless something falls through. Someone has also asked for a case that goes around there. So I'm messing around with some TPU kind of rubbery silicone-esque cases that could wrap around this thing. I haven't messed with it enough to say one way or the other that's going to happen, but I am going to say it's on my radar. So stay tuned for that. But I'm not going to be messing too much with the hardware. Otherwise, this all does kind of just stay as is. Some of the other things that I just wanted to chat about that maybe don't necessarily fit into everything. Oh, actually, I kind of lied. Let's back up a step here and talk about some of the decisions that we had with like evolution and forms and stuff. One large conversational piece that came up was going to be complexity of the game. I've heard a lot of things about complexity, more so the simplicity, which, quite frankly, it really surprised me in a good way as well. When I initially made the PicoNav, I was afraid that given the size of the screen, the amount of information that I can show is very limited, of course, right? Like, I don't have that ability to showcase too many words. In fact, I have 39 characters to show off everything. I was pleasantly surprised at the amount of people that said the battle system itself seemed simple, but like almost too simple. And I have abilities on here that can make the game potentially way more complex. Not too complex, but I was expecting more people to complain about the opposite, saying that the game looked too complicated. In fact, I only had, I think, exactly one comment about the menus being a little too clunky, but I think even that person said that after they use it, they could probably get used to it. And I think that's fair. I actually ended up giving this to one of my friends who has no experience with VPETs, who has no experience really with this type of game or simulator. And when I showed them the buttons, they were able to pick it up within like 5 seconds. So I genuinely think that once you get a hold of it, it should be okay. But in regards to the battle system specifically, it sounded like a lot of people wanted more complexity. And I think what we're going to do is during the beta, we'll start with that base roster of abilities. And I have other ideas to include things like different gems outside of just stat boosts, to have gems do things that give you maybe a passive buff or add an extra layer to the game itself. One of the concerns that I had was kind of forward thinking. If we ever introduce PvP, what I don't want you to do is to have to inspect your opponent to see what gems they have every single battle, because in my opinion that gets in the way of the simplicity. And I want to try to strike the balance of being easy enough still to pick up and play, but I want to give players enough depth to sink their teeth into it just enough where they're not just mashing the A button like I was. And to not to get too off topic, but a really good example of this is I was actually playing Pokemon Red and Blue for the first time, and I realized how easy it is just to steamroll the game with an overpowered starter Pokemon. Like, this is my starter who is currently level 50, and I think I'm fighting like level 20 something Pokemon. So I want to avoid a situation like this where you can stick with one set and then just run train through everybody. So trying to find that middle ground is actually going to be the single largest point of the beta test, as well as bug fixing and such. So I'm really curious to see what you guys are going to do with the battle system. I'm curious to see what bits of feedback we have to add complexity. I'm very happy as well that people are open to the idea of making more complicated mechanics, which is awesome. But I don't want to make it so complicated that it's like word soup and somebody can't just pick it up and not know what the heck is going on. I do also plan on implementing a system where I am going to roll back the gem system just a little bit, and while the gems are going to be difficult, if I had to put it on a difficulty scale of buying a new gem where 10 is like impossibly hard and 1 is like you sneeze and you walk into a gem, I was going to make it like an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. Like, it was going to be very punishing to lose a gem. I think I'm dialing that back down to like a 6 or a 7. And what I'm doing is I'm giving players 3 gem slots per deck. So the deck menu that I have in here is going to change. And what that will let you do eventually, so there'll be like 3 extra slots here and they'll look a little visually different. But what that'll do is you'll be able to switch gems on the fly, and when you lose something, you'll lose something from that deck. That means you can have more defined strategies per deck, and that opens the design space up a little bit more to create more unique gems that might lend to certain styles of gameplay that I couldn't do previous, or would maybe at least be a pain in the butt. So there are more changes in mechanics that I plan on adding. I also want to add achievements, and part of the achievements is to add something that will go into the main screen, kind of on the left and right here, kind of like trophies or badges or furniture items that you can show off for completing those achievements that would give you passive buffs. So things that would add like a 5% chance to find a more rare item or something, or you would, I don't even know, like, I don't know, EXP gains, or you would earn more money per encounter, or something along those lines. I want to add in the future as time goes on. That way, players have something to keep looking forward to do, and you still get a mix of customization. But the way you earn things is actually by unlocking things and completing challenges and stuff. So that's another thing that's on the chopping block for this. So there are a lot of things planned down the road that I quite frankly just have not talked about in the deep dive to this extent. And there were some really cool player feedback things again that I got. So that was just one thing that it made me incredibly excited to talk about. I am beyond ecstatic that you guys didn't find this battle system overwhelming because quite frankly that was my number one genuine fear. It wasn't the lack of evolution, it wasn't the lack of sound or whatever. Those I knew there were going to be some kind of back and forth, but when players told me that they wanted something more engaging past this as well, that that just opened the door up for so many opportunities. And I again, we're going to work very hard to make sure that we hit the proper middle ground, but still really cool. Some other really useful pieces of feedback that I just want to briefly mention. There were some really sweet ideas about things like having the Peanut or the PicoNav update tool allow you to customize like your LED colors. So what color happens when your pet is hungry or when it's tired or things like that. I think is a really good idea. I plan on adding that in a future version of the Peanut. It may not happen during the beta test. It may not even happen during launch, but it is on my project plan board now. So at some point I definitely want that to be on there. Um there were also some questions and comments about like the buttons. Some people love the clickiness, some people hate the clickiness. Quite frankly, just given the nature of the board itself, um, there's not too much that I could really do to address the button clickiness. I can try a couple of different things. I'm not promising anything. It's just kind of the nature of the board. You can kind of dampen the sound. But again, I've gotten very like mixed feedback about that. I will continue to experiment, but one of the things about the buttons being clicky, just from a mechanical perspective, is that these buttons here is sorry, excuse me. These buttons are very small and they're very fragile and they're very prone to breaking. You can see these little four tiny plastic pegs that are like a quarter of a millimeter thick or something. If any one of these breaks, it will effectively destroy the rest of the button. I've had many of these break in my testing prior to making these really flat buttons over here. So the reason it's as clicky as it is because there is absolutely zero contact and it hits perfectly. It is dead set in the middle. So there's not that much dampening. Could you install your own custom buttons? Absolutely. Could you make a different set of buttons that are a little more quieter, something similar to like how my finger works? Yeah, maybe. That's possible. I'm not promising that in the near future because I think what happens is that if you have any kind of like pressure or force smack dab in the middle like this, I'm just now realizing that I have noise suppression, so you can't even hear me click these buttons. But the point is that me doing this perfectly makes the same level of clickiness. In fact, it's probably a little bit more clicky than one of these buttons here. So realistically, for the people that want to, mod their own buttons in, absolutely you can. It's not going to be in the base version. The thing about this that I really want people to understand is that this base board is not changing. So what is on this board outside of this singular LED is what we're keeping. I don't want to introduce too much in here because the more we add, we start adding time and complexity for features that, from what I can see, a small subsection of people want. I don't disagree that they're not good additions, but we need to consider scope whenever we talk about these things because I'm just one guy. I hate saying that. That sounds like a cop out, but in order to deliver the best possible product I can, we need to keep that in mind. So, I think that's everything. I've talked for darn near half an hour. There's some really cool comments that people have made that I again, I'm in absolute love with. But as of right now, that's where we stand. I have a couple of other things planned for the channel just while I'm here. So for the holidays, expect a couple of non-Pico Nav related videos. There's actually two videos that I really want to get out that are completely unrelated to anything. I just wanted to do them. But the beta test will begin, or the beta applications have closed officially. I'll send out reminders, and the agreements need to be locked in by the end of the year. We will make purchases at the beginning of January, and then as soon as all the parts come in, they will ship out, honestly, within the next day or two. So we'll try to get everything ready before then. I will keep everyone updated with how production goes, with how testing goes. So if you also want to stay the most up to date and be a part of the conversation, feel free to join the Discord. But that's all I got. Thank you all so very much for watching. We just beat under a half an hour, which is good for me. But I'll talk to you guys later. Happy holidays if I don't see you or hear from you. Peace out.